comprehension can be of the subject matter. This is why study is important, not because books make you smart, but because the concepts that are presented to you in the text challenges your frame of thinking, and it allows you to grow and expand quite literally. Because without knowledge and concepts to test your awareness of reality, you're pretty much just stuck in one place. And if you're stuck in one place, then it's very easy to develop some type of fatalistic point of view where you think, oh, this shit is over. Nothing good is coming after this, right? But that's not the most efficient way to think or live your life if what you're actually seeking is an awareness.
Peace, power, and prosperity, y'all. Rob Blackstorm. Just want to implore everyone, stay spiritually sound, and keep your third eye open. Keep your third eye open. Your third eye is not just about having inner visions and astral travels and moving through multi-dimensions and clairvoyant and psychic abilities. Your third eye is also about discernment. Discernment. It's about being able to judge, being able to filter, being able to analyze, and most of all, to see beyond the surface of a thing. Now, since we've had this solar eclipse in Taurus, right, which is ruled by Venus, the planet Venus, which is tied to Hathor, Het Heru, right, divine feminine energy, the energy of nurturing, really the energy of fertilization, the energy of joy, the energy of music, but most importantly, the energy of feeling, energy of emotion. This is all tied into that solar eclipse that we just had with the sun of Venus and the moon of Venus. So let's look at the things that's happening, right? Kevin Samuels, someone who I've talked about how I felt about some of the things he was saying, right? He passes away, right? He passes away. Now, regardless of what you feel about him being right or wrong, he did offend, and he was very harsh in his critique of women. Now, he never said he was a psychologist. He never said that he was a spiritual coach, right? And women that went on his show volunteered to go on his show, right? He would be nothing without supporters and people who patronized him. But nevertheless, he did upset the divine feminine. He did upset, and he was saying things that were going against the balance of Ma'at. Let's keep it real. A lot of these principles, high value men, modern women, didn't make sense, especially when these dudes are modern. So he's one that got taken out. Dr. Umar can't accept any more donations. They blocked him from taking donations. You see what happened with young Pharaoh, right? His issues with his baby mother and how he's been behaving, right? And the things he's going through. Rashad Jamal got arrested recently, right? Something where he allegedly was told one of his children to allegedly see his penis, right? Or touch his penis. Allegedly. He's in jail now. Another dude, Vontae Coop, who was popular on the internet. He's in jail. Wendy Williams. Wendy Williams said she got $2 to her name after she was spewing all that gossip and hate. You have... who else? You have Tasha K spewing gossip and hate. Got hit with a $2 million lawsuit, right? From Cardi B. So there's a lot of things going on right now. There's a lot of things going on right now. There's a lot of so-called leaders getting taken down and getting taken out. And there's more to come. There's more to come. You're going to see some of your favorite YouTubers, some of your favorite spiritualists go through very harsh and very upsetting things. And they're going to be taking off some of these platforms. And the main reason is not to disparage these people, right? Not to teach a lesson, so to speak, but for you who are viewing this, to learn to lead yourself, to learn to take the information you need from these so-called scholars, from these so-called prophets, from these so-called leaders. Oh, I forgot to mention Brother Polite scandal, right? To take the information from these so-called prophets, leaders, brothers, ministers, preachers, XYZ, and to become the God that you are, to become the Most High, become the Most High within yourself, to become the God that is within you. What does that mean? What are you generating, operating, or destroying? That's C. Freeman L's description of God. But also mine is, how are you growing? What are you putting in order? And what are you destroying? That's my meaning of God. What are you growing? What are you putting in order? And what are you destroying? You have to think critically enough to know that what you might be to think or feel or what has been the truth is now subject to change, is now subject to new interpretation. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with changing your position. Trees grow and they branch off and they produce new leaves. A tree that's growing does not look like the same tree that was, I got a money tree in my house. That money tree has morphed into a whole another form than when I first purchased it. That's what you're supposed to do when you grow. You're supposed to grow, look better, feel better, get smarter, get wiser, and elevate in consciousness and bring your subconscious to your conscious mind. That's the goal of this work. That's really the alchemy of turning lead to gold. Becoming God simply is not because you were born with breath. It's not simply because you have melanin. It's not simply because you have carbon. By the way, carbon is in everything. It's not just 9 ether beings. Carbon is in all things, including this white man that y'all talk about so much. You see, this white supremacy thing, it's like this. Once you become magic, you become the magic. Once you are taking the studies of these occult principles, of these spiritual principles, of these esoteric principles, of these metaphysical principles, and you start to apply them in your practical day-to-day life, when you're going to church, when you're dealing with your family, when you are driving and somebody annoys you and pisses you off and cuts you off in the street, right? When you are dealing with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your baby moms, your baby mama. Once you are part and parcel with the divine in you, with the God in you, then guess what? White supremacy, it doesn't matter anymore. Guess what? Stress, anxiety, and these insecurities start to fade away. Guess what? Bad habits start to fade away. This is what happens when you make learning the knowledge of yourself, the true knowledge of yourself, how things work, for you? How things work for you? What are you here to do? What your purpose is? Once you realize what your purpose is and what you're here to do, not just financially, not just career-wise, but within your soul. Are you here? Have you gone through a specific trauma so that you are able, for instance, if you were a victim of domestic violence or childhood abuse, did you go through that so you could teach someone else how to heal and grow from it? Or are you just wallowing in the pain, wallowing in the experience that you had, instead of being an alchemist and turning lead to gold or turning to sugar, right? That's what we do when we are living a spiritual lifestyle. We don't complain about so-called white supremacy. We don't complain about so-called oppressors. We don't complain about modern women. We don't complain about high-value men. And one of the best lessons, which I stated on my Facebook, to learn from this whole Kevin Samuels experience, especially if you're a man, is that the most high value is not 6 figures. The most high value is not having a whole bunch of women. The most high value is having good health. That's the most high value. And he died of a heart attack. And the heart in Egyptian mythology, or Egyptian spirituality, I should say, because it's not a myth. The myth, behind the myth is meaning. Behind the myth is a way to activate your spirit. So in Egyptian spirituality, the principle of Ma'at, who is a woman, who is personified as a woman, it's about bringing that heart, those emotions, your breath, which the word spirit means breath, to bring those emotions, to bring that spirit into alignment, to bring that spirit into alignment with Ma'at, which is the feather of truth on the scale of Anubis, the judge. And the Anubis, the dog-headed god, the dog is personification of your verbal thinking, right? How you think, your ideas, your ideation, thought forms, right? That's what Anubis is all about. So that's why he's able to judge, because he's able to see your thought forms. And your emotions will be, your emotions are really what your spirit is. If you are angry or upset, right, you're in a negative spirit, right? You're in a negative vibration. When you're happy and joyous, you're in a positive spirit. You're in a positive vibration. The energy you carry throughout the day, whether it's negative, whether it's angry, whether it's joyful, or whether it's peaceful, that is how spiritual you are. That is what your spirituality is. And we're going to go live later on tonight and talk about this a little more. We're going to break down the four foundational principles of spirit, right? The 4 basic foundations of spirit. And we're going to break down the 7 principles of spirit, so that we really understand what we're talking about when we're talking about spirituality. But guard your third eye. Be careful that you are following people that you are not doing critical analysis on. Make sure that you are able to show and prove these principles, because one day you're going to run into someone smart that may not look like you and me, and they're going to ask you questions about these principles you're talking about. Okay, you come from another galaxy. Prove it. Okay, you come from planet Risk. Prove it. Okay, there's a Sirius X. Okay, prove it. Okay, there's a flat Earth. Okay, can you prove it? I don't want to hear, nobody wants to hear that you just download it. Because that's the same thing that the preacher told you about the Bible, right? The preacher told you that the Bible was downloaded, that the writers of the Bible got their information basically downloaded from God. They tell you that the Holy Book was inspired by God. But how do you know that? Right? They taught you to believe. But when you are a true spiritual warrior, a true spiritual alchemist, someone who is truly trying to engage in self-mastery, which is what this path is about. You have to show and prove what you're talking about. You can't just talk and say just anything. And because it sounds like a Marvel superhero comic, or because it sounds like something from Star Trek, or because it sounds space age, you just believe it. Your third eye is not as open as you think. Your third eye is not as open as you think. Your third eye might just be open to follow another preacher style person in the form of them being conscious. You still have a church mindset that you have brought into this spiritual, metaphysical, occult community when you want a preacher to still lead you. The only difference is instead of them using a Bible, they're using an Ankh. Now they're not even using Ankhs, they're using Orishas, right? They're using Ankhs, they're using Orishas. They're saying, oh, I downloaded information, which is the same thing as saying my information is inspired by God. But my teachings, what I was told, and when I would want to relay to y'all, is that you have to show and prove. When I came up, I came up on the nation, gods, and earth, and it was always about show and prove, God. You got to have some source and some substance. Now, this does not mean that a peer-reviewed journal from a scientist is necessarily the truth, because peer-reviewed journals you can manipulate those, right? There's companies that back the scientists that produce peer-reviewed journals. So those could be manipulated as well, right? Doesn't mean those are always the truth. But you want to trust your heart, right? And most importantly, you want to trust nature. When you go out here in nature and ponder some of these concepts that people tell you, nature will tell you if they don't make sense or if they make sense. For example, when the whole corona thing happened, first hit, April 2021, right? No, 2020, March, April 2020, right? Was it 2020? Yeah, 2020. When I came outside, after hearing everything on the news and what everybody was saying, when I came outside, nature was giving me a different story. And because nature gave me a different story, I was able to go back, do some research. YouTube reviewed, took my videos down by now, but I was able to come up with the source of where this really was coming from. And able to decipher that a lot of these things that they were telling us about certain technologies that start with the number 5 and end with the letter G, right, did have actual influence, and that certain people and certain foundations that end with the last name Gates influenced the technology industry to say that these particular millimeter waves from these towers were not influencing the human body, when that was not so. So the whole thing, but this comes from, again, that's really when you do have that third eye. When you have that eye of Agamotto, as you see in Doctor Strange. I'm going to watch Doctor Strange. I already watched it. I'm going to watch it again, and I'm going to break it down. So I'm going to watch it again on Tuesday. So look out for that breakdown Tuesday, Wednesday, when I really go in. But it's really just, when you go through it and watch it, it's really just going through, it's a story of Christ, resurrection of the Christ. And it's also a story about balance. There's a lot of themes in it, but it is basically going through the zodiac. And to give you a hint, when you see the first two scenes, the first main scene, you're going to see Doctor Strange and Wanda, and you're going to see rams or lambs, which is the Aries season. Then the next big scene that comes up, you're going to also see a bull-headed man, which is the Taurus. But make sure that when you are following these people, you're not just blindly following. You're not just following what feels good in your emotions. You have to balance the heart with the lightness of the fetter of Ma'at, which is truth. Right? Just blindly following your emotions makes you an animal. That's what animals do. They follow, quote-unquote, instinct, but that's just blind emotion. They don't think critically. They don't have a frontal lobe that's developed like the human. But the human that is a God body not only is a critical thinker, but they are divinely inspired critical thinker. They have divine downloads that add to their critical thinking. And then they look for patterns in nature, patterns in science, to also confirm what they're thinking and to see if it makes sense. So I'll be talking to y'all later. I'll be going live later. Probably around 7 p.m. tonight, 8 p.m. tonight. Maybe even 9, who knows? But learn to think for yourself. Make sure your third eye is really open and your third eye is not blind. Peace, power, and prosperity. Rob Blackstorm, I'm out.